Let me follow up on what Jeff said and give my perspective on what does on the question that I think is of greatest interest to everybody here. What does this mean for redeeming investors in Madoff? And Jeff made a few very important points. I'm going to supplement that with some additional thoughts of my own. First off, just as a preliminary matter, there's the question of the statute of limitations. And Jeff mentioned that in Bayou, by and large, the suits were for redemptions that were made within the last 2 years before the bankruptcy. It's important to keep in mind, and particularly in the Madoff situation, perhaps more so than in Bayou, that while under the federal bankruptcy statute, Section 548 of the Bankruptcy Code, you can only go back 2 years, the Bankruptcy Code also allows you, at the same time, to go back under whatever state's law would govern. In this case, that's New York law. And under New York law, you can go back for 6 years. Now, the standards are not exactly the same under state law. Arguably, the standards are a little bit less good from the plaintiff's standpoint, a little bit better for the defendant. But there's no question you can go back 6 years, and we suspect it's very possible that Mr. Picard will try to do that. Let me turn to the merits. A couple of points that may be a relief to those who are going to be on the defense side of this. First off, Jeff explained how in Bayou he and his legal team were able to recover profits from pretty much everybody. And it is true that the bankruptcy judge in Bayou ruled that every penny you took out in excess of the aggregate amount you put in, the bankruptcy judge defined as profits and said you have to give it all back. What Jeff didn't mention is we think that ruling was dead wrong. We had filed a motion for leave to appeal that before we settled, and that issue is going to go up to the district court in Bayou, and it may eventually go up to the circuit. It will also independently be looked at in Madoff. And let me give you one argument among several as to why we think the ruling was wrong. The legal context is the quote value context that both Jeff and I mentioned earlier. That is, you're entitled to keep the payments you received to the extent you gave quote value for them and did so in good faith. Put aside good faith, we'll get to that in a minute. Jeff argued in Bayou that you simply can't show that you gave value for anything in excess of principal that you received back. Everything above that is profits, and because you didn't give value for it, you have to return it. We argued that overlooked a critical point. Remember, as I mentioned and as Jeff mentioned, what's the value you gave in exchange for your redemption? The concept is the bankruptcy code says that if a debtor pays off a debt, the satisfaction of a debt constitutes value. And by extension, if the debtor satisfies any legal obligation, doesn't have to be a traditional debt, it can be paying off a tort claim, in this case a fraud claim for a rescission. The satisfaction of that claim is value. Now, in Bayou, it was actually conceded by the plaintiffs after we made the argument that all of the redeeming investors had a valid fraud claim. And we argued that what that meant is, had they gone into court, they could have gotten back not just their principal, but also prejudgment interest. New York law allows you to get prejudgment interest at 9% per year. If you take the 9% figure and apply it in Madoff, that might well wipe out the entirety of the alleged profits. There are additional arguments as well that one could make to try to wipe out the alleged profits in Madoff. But let me just throw out that one so that you all understand this is very much an open issue. It's going to be hotly litigated.